lot going on with the Cubs right now during this offseason. Niren and I are going to chew on some of the things that we would like to see and what we think is going to happen. Two different scenarios here, but thank you guys for being part of the Cubs baseball channel. Let's get this show started. All right, Mick Gillispie, Niren Desai with you here on the Cubs baseball channel. This is like the live version of the mailbag. Is you're the best of the best, right? As far as like throwing up stuff to talk about and to sink our teeth into. So great to have you back on again to talk some Cubs baseball. And what I want to do is just have you kind of throw some stuff out there, the things that you see as a Cubs fan and someone that's very educated on baseball. I'll kind of give you my take and we'll just go back and forth on that if it's cool with you.
Yeah, I mean, like I think we're trying to predict or read Jed's mind. That's why I'm like always wondering, as I would say, what is Jed doing? I never know what he's doing.
Yeah, right. And you never know what's going on behind the scenes. I got a feeling that because he's on a 1-year deal right now, I mean, basically, what some people may call lame duck, that there's a part of him that is being restricted on spending, because if they don't bring him back and he doesn't have success, I'm sure they don't want to be locked up in a bunch of deals where the next guy couldn't come in and have to inherit a bunch of stuff. And I hate to say that, but that's how this business works. And you're already kind of looking at this, the Dansby Swanson deal, and you got a 8th batter in the lineup that you're paying $177 million for. So, I mean, and unless he turns it around drastically, you're kind of saddled with the contract and a guy not living up to it. So, well, that to me kind of feels like what could be going on. That's just my opinion. No one's told me that. That's just being around this for a long time, knowing the players involved. But I do like Jed Hoyer as a person. I think that it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't figure it out, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last year for him. I mean, I feel like it really is 50-50.
Well, I think we're going to see, we might be wondering what he's going to do for 2025, but we also might be counting down, 365 days from now, who's going to be in the front office. So, I mean, that's kind of a crazy dichotomy that the Cub fan base is in right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, I think there's some obvious things that the fan base can see and want, but we also got to factor in that what's Jed going to do? And I think that's two.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, fire away. Give us your first question or scenario, and then we'll let's chew on this.
Well, I'm thinking, we're already getting these tea leaves, right? We're not going to play in the deep end of the pool. Hopefully it's a big fake out, right? With Soto and some of these other guys. So what do you think is going to be the way we get some thump in this lineup, given we're kind of crowded in the field?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't know if it's a deep fake or not. Just having been around the Cubs for a long time, I really think that they're sincere when they say that they're not spending any money. And I just told you why. I think that they feel like they're looking at the Jason Hayward deal. They're looking at Dansby Swanson, and they've got to be having a little bit of buyer's remorse on Dansby, and I know he kind of came on at the end of the season, but when you pay that kind of money, you're expecting that guy to come on all the time. I would think that you would want someone that's going to bat at the top of the lineup and produce, and that's not what happened. So I'm sure there's a reluctance for the front office, as I mentioned before, to spend. Now, if I was the Cubs, and I've said this on the channel, this is the year you spend. And the reason why is that you're sharing the city with the White Sox. And for baseball fans, it's great, right? You got the American League and you got the National League. You got two teams in the same city. But as a business, you could get them out of town. They're already talking about selling. Nashville's going to get a major league team, whether it's expansion or not, whether it's Tampa Bay or the White Sox. The White Sox aren't going to get a new stadium, so they're stuck there. And obviously there's issues that are going on over there, but they feel like they can't make money being over there. They stink. If I'm the Cubs, I'm going all in right now. I'm going to do the same strategy that Sam Zell did when he was trying to build up the value of the team. Go out and got Alfonso Soriano and other great players, and we had a great team, and it made the value of the team go up. I would go totally in if I was the Cubs right now. And it would be, first off, because I want to win. But the second thing is because the better you are, the easier it's going to be for the White Sox to leave town. And if you got them out of town, all of a sudden, think of the resources that you would have. You wouldn't be splitting resources anymore with the White Sox. Not that and I'm not talking about resources on a national level, because the Cubs are a national brand, international brand, really, and the White Sox are very regional. But there's still regional money that you would get. The TV value of the marquee network would go up, being that it's the only baseball team in town. There's no competition. That's why the Cubs are short-sighted right now. And I get it. Yeah, we're involved in this and we're involved in that, and we're spending money on this and that, which includes, the infrastructure, the stadium, all of the buildings around. That all costs. High taxes. Like, I get it. Like, from a business aspect, being a guy that took economics in college, I understand that their dollar's stretched right now, more than probably most baseball fans. But if I was going to go out and get a Juan Soto and all of a sudden have a face of the franchise, then, or go and get a Corbin Burns or get both like the Dodgers have done, go all in, you win a World Series again, get back in the playoff mix, you're going to make your money back. And also you could possibly basically make it easier for the White Sox to leave town. I'd just be so good that people would even be like, I don't want to watch a team that loses 130 games. I want to watch these Cubs. Now, you asked me, like, what could they do with what they have right now? And I found it interesting that all of the national writers are saying that cover baseball that Cody Bellinger could be traded. What's the value for him? He obviously couldn't go out and get a multi-year deal at $27 million plus, or he would have done it. He would have left if he could have got a better deal. There's no such thing as hometown discount or, hey, I like this place. No, it's all about the money. Couldn't get the money. He stays. He's still a good player. How much of that contract are the Cubs going to have to eat? Is someone willing to take that deal on? We'll find out, right? But that's a potential trade. And then what's the value that you would get back? You keep hearing Nico Hoerner, but we don't know if Nico Hoerner is going to bring the same value right now because he had surgery. He might not even be available at the beginning of the season. Teams are going to be reluctant to do that. You got no trade clauses on Ian Happ, which if you didn't, I'd trade him. And then Seiya Suzuki, I like Seiya a lot, but I could possibly trade him too if he didn't have a no trade clause. But I'm not trying to send him out. I'd probably trade Happ. Now he's a 3-time Gold Glove winner. But I question his consistency, over the course of a season. Big games, but small consistency. It seems like a lot of his hits come in the same day. But you got all these minor leaguers, and I'm guessing that if you're willing to trade Owen Casey, or you're willing to trade James Triantos or Matt Shaw or all of them, you could make a deal with a team like the Blue Jays. I could see the Blue Jays being like, we would love to have Owen Casey. Casey's going to be a star player. Just bank that. And he's from Canada, spends the offseason going around with Canadian youth teams, trying to build up the sport of baseball in Canada. He's a great guy, very, very good hitter. And a really, really decent outfielder too. But Toronto, I'm sure they're probably thinking the same thing. Like, hey, we got this guy. So maybe you go out and you get Vlad Guerrero Jr., but you're only going to have him for a year, so that's one way you could get some thump in the lineup. If you're not going to spend money on free agents. And then, the problem is it's not like there's a lot of really extremely awesome thump players that you're going to get without paying for them, right? I mean, look at the teams that were in the playoffs this year, right? The Dodgers, Ohtani, Freeman, Betts, Will Smith, I'm like, they have a great lineup. They even have guys that don't even play that much that are good, right? Because they went out and bought those guys. Bryce Harper and that team that the Phillies have, Schwarber's on that team and Castellanos is on that team, and they have a great team. They have a bunch of guys that can hit and that they had to pay for. So I think at some point, you can look and see other organizations and say, hey, look, there's Michael Busch, who's dominating in the minor leagues, but we're going to have to develop him. But but to get someone that's ready to be a star right now without spending money, it's going to take trades. And Cubs wise, I mean, maybe the best thing that you could trade would be one of your starting pitchers like Justin Steele, but I don't know that you would do that. So, I mean, you're looking at the guys in the minor leagues or hoping that somebody values Cody Bellinger. So I don't know if that's a roundabout answer, Niren, but that's kind of where I'm at. What are you thinking here?
Well, I think you're going to see a little bit more of the Jed playbook. I think you're going to see a lot of threading the needle kind of stuff and opportunistic type moves. Keep an eye. I think we're going to have to keep an eye on some of these teams that have financial issues, like with the Rays with their stadium issue, like a Brandon Lau. Might be someone that they may be looking to move. He could play second base while Nico's coming back and then move to DH as well. They already have a relationship with them, with some trades they've made. I think that you're going to see something maybe and then I think you're going to see some other, I think they're actually going to lean into pitching, but I think it's not going to be the pitching at the top tier. I think it's going to be, hey, we can get so-and-so on a 2-year deal. I think you're going to see a lot of 2-year deal type guys. The big risk, I think, in trades as fans is that we have no idea how internally they value other teams' players and their own players, right? It's a total guessing game, right? So, hey, as Cub fans, we know that James Triantos is low strikeout, a lot of talent, speed, all that stuff. But, does he, how impactful is it? If he was left-handed, maybe different.
Right.
But he's right-handed, right? And he's still got to get through AAA and then the adjustment to the pros. So it's how does it help me in 2025, right? If you're a team like Seattle that wants to make a deal with us for pitching, they want Triantos, well, how does that help them? They need thump, right? They got that big stadium. He's not a thumper, and he's not going to help them right away. So I just think it's one of those things where it's impossible for us to know. And I think trading Cody Bellinger is a huge asset, but at the same time, what if PCA and Busch struggle next year? Who's the backup, right? Who's your fallback option, right? Against lefties, especially, right? Cody can hit lefties, and he could play center and first. So I think that's one of those things where it's careful what you wish for if you trade them, because then you're oh, we got another hole in the 2, 3, 4 spot. So I just think it's one of those things. What I think is going to happen is that they're going to be, instead of trying to create an edge, a super edge or an obvious edge in a certain area, it's going to be a lot of, piecemeal, we're going to get this guy on a 1-year, 2-year deal. And we think, with our new pitching guru, we can turn an average player into a great player or a good player into a great player. And it's going to be a lot of this opportunistic stuff because I think they're waiting for that window. And I think that window might be one of those things where we don't know when the window is, right? The window might be in August of 2025, or it might be in May of 2026.
Or we don't even know if that window is even going to open,
Right. But I think that's the thing. If you're internally, we don't know, right? Internally, what's going on inside? I think in their organizational meetings and they're sitting there behind closed doors and we are 100% sure PCA and Shaw are difference-making bats, right? And we just don't know when, right? And that's got to be real. That's a real conversation. You don't want to trade them. You don't want to block them. And you got to let them play. You got to see how it filters out. So I really think that the first, 60, 70 games next year are going to be an audition. And then you're going to see that opportunistic trade deadline where it's hey, we can get a couple of these veterans to go bats 2, 3 for us, for the last 80 games or 65, 75 games. We gave these guys a shot to develop. They're not there yet. I think you're going to see a lot of that again, which, as a Cub fan, and then even from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense to me, right? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you go for the sure thing than a hope, right? Or, hey, we can outsmart the league and win the division with 89 games.
Hey, look, and just to kind of feed off of this a little bit, at the end of last year, you're out of it. Why didn't we see Owen Casey? And we see Kevin Alcantara, who is not even on the same level of player as Owen.
We saw that 40-man roster stuff.
It's not even close. Owen Casey's way better. Then I thought, well, maybe they're just doing this to like maybe they don't want to start the clock or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
But I mean,
that's
for me, what the thing about it is you're out of it last year. If you're really worried about winning, once you're out of it, you're out of it. I mean, I know cosmetically it looks great that you ended up 83 and 79 again, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because you didn't make the playoffs. So why not do like the rest of baseball, which is why you won so many games at the end of the year, and give your young players a chance to develop? We didn't develop anybody. We didn't see Matt Shaw, which what he would have been overwhelmed there, but he could have gotten some experience. We didn't see Owen Casey, who could have been ready last year. They pushed Alcantara up there, and maybe they just wanted to raise his stock to maybe trade him, because he's definitely somebody to me that would be tradable. But I just felt like we missed such a great opportunity once we were out of it to develop. And the reason why that's so important now to me is that we have watered down. Everybody followed the Houston Astros, right? The Houston Astros front office decided that minor league baseball didn't matter anymore, that they didn't even care about it. They would just develop their guys at a sports complex somewhere. And then everybody in the business is like, oh, they won the World Series. Forget about the fact that they were beating on trash cans to know what pitch was coming. But, then now we have this business model that we don't believe in scouting. Analytics is everything, and the games don't matter anymore. We can just go play at a complex. Well, the problem is that these guys are getting to the big leagues where people really know how to play, and they're not ready. They can't do it. Look how long it took for Hollywood Pete Crow Armstrong to look like Hollywood Pete. You just saw little flashes of it, but it took a year to get there. And that's why not start that early and get that experience out there? You're going to have to get your ass kicked in this game when you go from AAA to the big leagues now, because it's just
There's a question though, Mick, I have for you on that one. Is there do you see it in the minor leagues that if someone's having success, they're not going to point out that there's a gap between your success in AA and the majors? Because he was running like crazy on the highlights in AA, forcing bad throws, forcing errors, things like that. But sometimes you got to say, hey, that's great that you're cranking these meatball pitches in your happy zone, but you're not going to get that pitch in the pros. Who's telling someone like PCA, at that level that, is that kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's a whole Gen Z millennial battle, generational battle. Hey, sometimes you got to tell someone this is not going to work if you don't adjust for velocity.
There's not a lot of former major leaguers anymore. I mean, there's some, but if you're like a really outspoken, former big leaguer that's saying, hey man, analytics are great, but you got to be able to make an in-bat adjustment, and you've got to be able to do this. You got to be tough like this. They don't want that. If you go against anything that is kind of a philosophy thing, you're going to be out of a job. And I think that's bad, because I'm not saying that you have to agree with, or you don't want people in your organization that disagree with you. At the end of the day, the person in charge is the person in charge, right? But you got to have people that dissent, just because you need to hear that. And it feels like what happens is that the dissenters get pushed out because the analytics people don't want to hear about, well, I don't really care what you did in the big leagues, back in 1983, right?
Right.
But the problem is that those people and what they're sharing and what they're telling is it doesn't show up on an analytics chart. Sometimes it's how tough you are in a situation. Sometimes it's the game within the game. It's a mentality that you have to have. The level of play in the minor leagues has gotten really bad because they push people up so fast. You just go, you get out of college and you're in AA. Yeah. And there's just certain things that those guys in college baseball is a lot better now because it's competitive and now there's even money involved in it. But at the same time, it's a skill game, and the skill level isn't where it was. So you get to the big leagues and it's like you're trying to basically figure out how to do a lot of the things that you should be able to do already when you get there. And I think that's a big part of it. And you see it where, I was just disheartened when I saw that the Cubs were like, hey, we're getting rid of scouts, and we're not going to have big league or double or triple A scouts. We're just going more on analytics because I feel like that's kind of getting further and further away from where I feel like there's a hole, not just with the Cubs, but with baseball in general.
Yeah, it seems like a marginal cost though, right? Just to given all the things they have to spend money on, just having like these scouts. I mean, who knows who these scouts are, right? Somebody's friend or somebody's
Sometimes
nephew.
they are. Sometimes
who
they're
knows?
geniuses, man. Sometimes they're people that I've met scouts from other teams that come in to the teams I'm at in Double A, and they'll sit there and tell you your organization better than some of your own people know your organization.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can remember other scouts of ours saying, "Hey, man, just watch what you say because we don't want you giving those guys an edge." And I'm pretty good at seeing this myself. I mean, I've spent a lot of time doing this, and I pick up on things because I'm there every day, right? And so being that that I work with the Cubs, I'm cognizant of that. I tell my guys that too. I don't want to be the one that says, "Hey, devalue somebody." By saying, "Hey, I don't like the way that this guy never hustles." So I didn't see that, the fact that these guys are there, the good ones, the great ones, if you have enough of those guys breaking down organizations where they know, I'll give you a great example. Think about the Rays trading where the Cubs got Matt Garza and we gave up, we gave up Chris Archer. We gave up Robinson Chirinos. We gave up Sam Fold. And we gave up Brandon Geyer. Like, that's scouting. That's not analytics. That's scouts, man. They had reports on these guys. They knew what they brought to the table. Some of those guys were prospects. Some of them weren't. And that turned out to be not a good trade for the Cubs. And it turned out to be a great trade for Tampa Bay. And all those players went on to play in the big leagues. Some of them were stars. Some of them weren't. But that's why scouting is important.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important. Now, I don't know how the whole thing's going to be structured, but I have a lot of respect for scouts and what they bring to the table. And I think them getting rid of scouting is it's just a bad part of where we are right now in the game of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think we over-indexed. I think the Cubs have really over-indexed on analytics, where they think they can outsmart things with market inefficiencies or tweaks, versus raw talent, right? Raw talent plus analytics. That's where the edge is, right? And guys that, and I love the intangibles too. Guys that love playing, to have to play day games, it's not easy, right? For these guys to come in fresh, even from the minor leagues, you play mostly night games. You got to come in. It's a totally different schedule. When you lift, when you get your other work in, I think, and then just being a lot of these guys are night owls. These young athletes. So I think that's the thing. You have to marry all of it. In terms of for example, in Chicago, I actually had a friend that knew that Addison Russell was out and about late at night running around. Right, he knew, and he doesn't know anybody. He just a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
Well, the Cubs should have known that, right? The Cubs should have known that first, not out in Chicago hearsay. People know it, right? So that's the thing that people should know. That's the Cubs should know who's committed to this lifestyle of playing day games and being loving the game, plus the talent, plus the analytics, plus doing the work, all that stuff. Wilson Contreras was let go because they didn't think he was committed to the pitching game plan. What he was doing early, he didn't want to adjust, right? He was doing a lot of the stuff in the beginning, but they wanted to keep evolving that. And they didn't want to keep him around for that, because he wasn't willing to go further.
Right. And they made that move, and look at us now with the worst catching in the major leagues.
We've got a big hole there, and they haven't solved it.
Awful. Just pay the guy. And, what a game plan, just it so bad. And I hope they fix that, because that to me is that catching in general in baseball is a very, very tough position to field. Since the steroids era, where you guys were all pumped up, you could bounce back from injuries fast. It's not like that anymore. And it's kind of back to the way it was in the 80s. I mean, you don't have a lot of guys that can hit and catch. And for the Cubs, I look at their catchers and don't think they have a lot of guys that can catch or hit. I did like the way that Amaya kind of picked it up at the end of the year, but that's an area where I hope they make a move moving forward. All right, what's the next one? Give me throw another one out there. This was fun so far.
Well, I think what's one thing that I think that is really lacking on this team is back end bullpen, because I want to shorten that game. We've got a good starting rotation. I think they're going to add to it, but back end bullpen. Here's what I'm really curious. What do you think they're going to do? Because I think there's definitely an obvious answer to create some kind of competitive advantage in our division and also the NL.
Now, the funny thing is that all the reports that you hear are that the Cubs are going after starting pitching, right? Which maybe it's, the beginning of this, and maybe you kind of wait around a little bit on back end bullpen just because it's an easier commodity to fill, right? Starting pitching is it's for the Cubs anyway. They actually have developed some pitchers lately, but not a lot over the last, Theo Epstein era into the Jed Hoyer era, right? So, but they have some guys, and they actually did a pretty good job starting last year, pitching wise. The problem is they got a lot of guys hurt, but you keep hearing their name come up in deals that would add starting pitching. And I was like wondering, like, do you think that, in my mind, I'm like, maybe they do that, and that gives them the ability to maybe trade one of the guys that they have, because, you got all these left-handers, and then it's like, hey, what about this guy? Well, he's another lefty, Is that a possibility where maybe you go out and you get someone, and then maybe you trade somebody you have, or maybe you just, repurpose someone and into the bullpen? But I'm guessing that with Smiley's money and the money that you got back from Hendricks, that you probably buy some back end bullpen pitching. I'm guessing that's probably what they're thinking, because you can buy that, and that's pretty affordable.
Well, I think what they should do are two different things, right? Well, I think they should go and get Tanner Scott, possibly, depending on price tag. And the Hader deal is going to be definitely a bar that they're going to use against us or anybody bidding for them. But think if they had Tanner Scott and they signed Paul Sewald, who was an ex-closer that struggled last year. You have to look out for these post-October bullpen guys, right? These deep October guys, they always seem to struggle the next year because of the extra month of pitching and the wear and tear of a pennant chase. So he kind of struggled last year, but he could be really interesting because he's not going to demand a 5-year deal,
right?
But I think that's where I think Jed's going to be. Oh, we'll just get Paul Sewald on a short deal and be done with it, versus trying to make it a real advantage of getting like a Tanner Scott and a Sewald. So you have like two closers. So you're never overusing them. And if one, goes on injury or one's got too many days in a row, you kind of save them. But that's the thing. Like, that's what I really want to see, is maybe 2 or 3 veteran relievers, so that Hodge, Ben Brown, these other guys, Tyson Miller, things like that, they can all like slot behind them, because you can't use, bullpenning is so different now, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to use these guys more than 3 out of 4 days. And really, if you do that, you got to give them a couple of days off after that anyway, right? So if you have 6 solid bullpen guys that kind of sequence out games where you minimize back-to-backs and multi-innings, then, you can get a Walker Buehler on a bounce-back deal, or you can get a Eovaldi on a short-term deal when they're going to miss starts, because they've always have missed starts. And then you could create an advantage around that. I just don't know if they're going to do that. I just feel like they're not. I feel like it's going to be, we're going to get so-and-so on a short, like a 1-year deal. And then, our pitching Sherpa is going to, give him a new pitch or something like that. And then he's going to hurt his arm, and Wicks will be back out there. It was Wisniewski.
Right. Yeah. That's if they're going to go out and really improve this roster without money, they're going to have to make trades. And then, if you're the ownership, how willing are you to allow that too? I mean, if you're not giving them money to spend, how restrictive of this are you? Or do you say, hey man, I'm fine with whatever you guys want to do, knowing that they could make trades out of desperation to try to save their jobs? And I know for a fact that front offices have done that before. where they're trying to save their job and everybody else's job. And so maybe they're taking a risk that they wouldn't normally take.
Well, big thing there is Jed will find another job. Carter will find another job. What about the rest of the front office?
Mm-hmm.
They have to move. They don't make a lot. They don't make that kind of money that, they can just sit out a year or two. And there's only 30 teams, right? So
Yeah.
I really think that they're going to be like, hey, we got to make sure we get this 2-year extension at least to see this plan come through. That's why I really think we're going to see, some tea leaves pop up. They're like, hey, we really believe in some of these guys.
Right.
And, we're going to give them a shot, right? And we're going to strengthen, hopefully they're going to strengthen an area where they can mask their development, right? Like there's going to be a development period of the unknown, right? Like that first 80, 90, like the first 60, 70, 80 games of a lot of young guys. And I think they're hopefully going to secure another area. And I'm not even sure how they're going to do it, right?
Well, here's the thing you got to remember now. They don't have a lot of runway. You know what I mean? Like you had that at the end of last year, but you decided to try to win at the end of the season instead of develop. Now, if you go into this season and you're trying to develop and you lose, you're gone. So I don't know that it doesn't make any sense to me for them to, it's almost like you're better off playing the veteran guys. Let's keep Patrick Wisdom and not have one of these other guys that need.
That would be really demoralizing.
But you know what I'm saying, though? I mean, because if you go and do this and you could fall out of it, you can't win in the first 60 days of division, but you can lose it really easy,
Well, that's the thing. That's why I'm thinking if they have a really strong pitching staff and a really good back end bullpen, even if they're a little like more veteran guys that like, hey, they may not last 8 months, but they're going to last the first 2.5 months, right? And then you can hopefully, give Shaw some run. You can give Casey some run, maybe Mo Baller some run and see what they got, right? See how good. I mean, Mo Baller just seems like one of these guys that like just has an ability, God-given ability to hit, but doesn't mean, it doesn't mean he's going to be aces on the first day, but he's going to be able to develop quickly. That's a risk. But then if you've got a strong pitching staff where it's like, hey, we've got to win a lot of 3-2 games or 4-3 games and 2-1 games, maybe that's the angle. And I think there's a lot of different ways to get in. And then that's what I'm saying, like in July or June, July, they're like, hey, look, these guys are talented, but they're just not there yet. And then you're going to see hey, let's go get JD Martinez, or let's go get, some other veteran guy that can really carry that, like a Tommy Pham, that could carry the team for 2-3 months in August, and we can sneak in and hey, we can, kind of paper over a fake contending team to get that 2-year extension. I think that's the play here. It's not, hey, we're going to go win 96 games, and if we're bad, we'll win 92. That's what you want. Yeah. If we underperform, we win 92, and if we hit our projections, we win 96. I'm not seeing that mentality from this organization right now, and it's sad because Cub fans deserve better, given the price of the product. But just look at they're gonna sell out a January Cubs Fest with a bunch of super fans, and it's gonna be like,
count me in there.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna sell it out, and it's gonna be like, like Shaw, it's gonna be, and then we've got Jefferson Rojas coming in 2026. I mean, it's like, okay, great,
forever. Yeah. The other thing too is that 83 and 79 didn't even feel like 83 and 79 because they were so far below 500 for most of the season. Like when the rosters of the other teams got watered down at the end, they padded those stats a little bit, but this team to me could be a 70 win team easy, So I mean, like and Jed's postseason press conference is kind of like, when we need this guy to do this and we need this, you put it was like a few years ago, they decided to spend money and they decided to give Ian Happ a big contract extension. They signed Dansby Swanson, which I was like not in for that at all. And then they got Suzuki. I thought that was interesting because you had so many outfielders, but I'll take it. He's a good player. And then now I'm looking at it and I'm going, there's, you got Dansby's got to step up and have a good year. He can't bat eighth and be, warning track power guy. He's got to drive in runs. Like he's got to be like your third or second hitter and contribute. Right. Ian Happ's got to be more consistent. Like, he has huge games and he carries the team, and then you don't hear from him for a week, and then he does it again. It'd be nice to maybe have like hits along the way in those other games. Say his defense is so bad, I would put him at DH, but he's hurt a lot, and it seems like it's always the same type of injury with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping, like, if you, like, I was telling you offline, is like, you got to look at these numbers over a broader period of time. And Seiya has really solid, weighted runs created numbers over the long period, not just 6 months or 3 months or whatever, over a year and a half. So do people, like, does that mean teams want him? Because if they want him, like, that's where Jed's got to, like, he's got to act, right? He's got 2 years left, short-term deal. He's got a no trade clause, but does he doesn't want to go to
into it. Yeah, right.
Does he want to go to a team that wants a short-term deal? And you got to use, like, you were talking about that Garza trade. That's the Rays. The Rays are the geniuses about arbitrage, taking short-term assets and turning into long-term assets.
Right.
And it's payroll allocation, it's roster pipeline. Like, you go on their pipe, like, I don't know about this year, but last year I remember going on their roster. I'm like, look, they have no 40-man crunch on their team. They're so smart. They make sure they never get into a 40-man crunch where, like, oh, we're clogged at a position, or we got to trade somebody out of desperation because we have no room for them. That doesn't happen on the Rays. That's where the Cubs should never be in that position, because that's not about having the most money. That's about having the smartest guys that are long-term planners, right? That's just having, like, true minds that think long-term and are strategic. So those are the types of things we'd like to see with, like, the assets they have. Like, Bellinger's an asset. Like, let's say, so Bellinger's scheduled to make $30 million next year, right? 27.5 plus his option. Well, if you picked up $10 million of that deal, right, for, like, the Guardians, what would they give you, right? The Guardians can't afford a $30 million player. What would they give you? They have 2 good hitters. They don't have a long lineup. That's what hurt them last year. So it's like, hey, let's turn our assets into something that's more valuable to us in the long term than it is to another team in the short term. I mean, those are the things you'd like to see, some really cutthroat moves that even as a fan base, we'd be like, oh, was that smart? And I want them to be right and us to be wrong during the season.
You said, and we got to wrap it up, but you said something when we were talking before this about them adding the pitching guy, right? Or was it hitting guy? They got the guy from the Rays.
Yeah, they got some pitching guru. He's 30. Supposedly, like, Lance Brodowski. A lot of people, like, passed, and they were all saying this is like a big. He's a dude out there in the pitching development world that's a high riser.
Mm-hmm. And it felt a lot like the Craig Counsell deal last year. It's like, oh, we got a new manager. Like, maybe this is a sign that things are going to be where we're going to spend, and we're going to get John Lester, and we're going to start building. And then when in actuality, you got to have players to win.
Well,
right?
I'm convinced that the players rolled in and they go, wait, we got a new manager, but we didn't get any more talent. Like, that's not how it works. I'm convinced there's a little bit of a letdown, in the clubhouse, that, like, we need both. We need, a great manager and great talent. Yep.
All right, man. Well, this was fun. Let's do it again. Let's try to get together again next week. You guys get in the comments section and tell us what you think. This is what this channel's all about, especially the hot stove season, kind of seeing where things go. I'm pulling for Jed to get this thing done and put together a World Series contender. It'd be nice to be back in the playoffs. It'd be nice to feel comfortable and excited about the team that is going to hit the field in 2025, but we'll find out. So, Niren, great job, man. Thank you. And thank you guys as well. Like, subscribe, thumbs up here on the Cubs baseball channel. Go Cubs.